help and some modifications based on the surveys that we sent out. You know, I was going to present this at the beginning of the semester, but I was out those 2 days for my mother-in-law. And so kind of I'm behind, but we've got it moving forward, so we'll have that discussion. Kelly Mead, I'd like to introduce you to your planning group here. Kelly is our newest math teacher. Kelly is teaching up in the math department, obviously as a math teacher. And you all know Tracy Bledsoe. Those that didn't know Tracy, Tracy's still in the math department, but she's also joined the SPED department. And so Tracy's working as an inclusion teacher in the SPED department. So we had a couple little changes there. There's another lady, Kim McCann. I don't know what period she has planning, but Kim's another new member to the math department as well. So I do that in the faculty meeting, let y'all know, but again, I wasn't here for that day, so I'm sorry. Today, like I said, we're going to talk about what you visited. It's just kind of sharing the activating strategies that you saw when you visited somebody in a department. Hopefully it gave you a chance to go see somebody different. I do know some people pick cards of people within their own department to kind of just go and see, but hopefully you got a chance to go see somebody else and, and kind of see something different. The most interesting talks we've had is like when a social studies teacher went to a math room and saw something and how difficult those kind of things can be. So we put a spelling error in that card on purpose. We just wanted to see who would correct that as we went through. I want to thank all of you that corrected that for us. You won. You won. Sorry. And those that didn't catch it, you lost. There you go. Well, we're going to have a discussion now about it. And what I'm just going to do, since we read left to right, in most cases, unless you're dyslexic, I'm going to start to the left, and we'll start with you. Could you go ahead and tell us a little bit? I got Ruth Anna when her mouth was full. Yep. I was a great waiter, because I always asked people if they needed something else when their mouths were full. And they could never send me on errands. I planned that out. They couldn't make me fetch. Their mouth was full. Oh, everything's good. They nodded and I walked away.
That helps, thanks.
I stalled for you.
Okay, so I went to see Mr. Durrance, and it was happened to be AP Bio. So it was about 17 kids, and his was in the beginning of his class. They were starting a lesson on genes and 3 categories of genes and things you would need to get cancer. You have to have one from each of those categories, at least to have any kind of cancer. So he was playing a game that he lovingly calls Cancer Roulette. And the kids had a bag in the middle of the table, and he went through, it was great. He went through like saying, okay, you reach 20 years old, and if for your life your parents have been smoking in your room, then take a card. And the card may or may not have had the aspects of cancer that they needed. And they saw when they got cancer, they marked down what age they were and then kept playing, and they could get cancer multiple times and see what they would get to, 65, 80 years old. And so they were very engaged. They wanted to get cancer. Or they were surprised that they lasted so long. The thing was that you needed to have one from all 3 of these categories. You could have multiple things in one category and another one, but if you don't have any in the other one, you do not have cancer. And so they were like blown away that they had so many checks in all these other categories, but they still didn't have cancer, which was interesting. But I was able to follow it, and I am interested in the subject, so that does help a little bit and know some things. But let's see. After they were done, they went through and figured out their average on the class of who did get cancer and what the class average was, and then matched that with the national average, and it actually lined up pretty closely to who nationally, statistically, gives you cancer. And that was it. Some of the cards were blank, so they didn't always get something, but by the end they were taking cards if they plan on microwaving with plastic or using straws the rest of their life or doing whatever, so they were taking a lot of cards.
Thank you.
Work, Bill?
All right. What I am going to ask, thank you for sharing that. It sounds like a great activity. I'm going to ask, since that video camera is on me the whole time just sitting here, I'm going to ask that you guys come up to the front when you present. So thank you for sharing, Ms. Whitcomb, you win that prize. And so now, because I can already read the eyes before Ms. Garcia, she needs somebody to practice first. I'm going to call Coach Folsom up and let him go next.
All right, camera.
He's ready. He's going to be the guinea pig.
Smile a lot, Zach.
Yeah, that's my favorite thing. All right, I had Miss Halvey, and her activity, it was pretty unique because she only had 6 kids in the entire class. I guess it's just a smaller class. And the class, she started it out by talking about, one kid walked in with a bag of potato chips. And obviously the style of her class and her class subject aids into what she was doing with this. But the kid walked in with a bag of potato chips. I guess he may walk in every day with a bag of potato chips, like most of our kids do. And she obviously asked them like where they come from, and the kids were bright enough to say potatoes, and where they come from, and they come from the ground, and you grow them in the ground and things like that. And so she kind of aggravated the kids by obviously calling on what they know, their prior knowledge, and then getting them engaged. It's easy to connect things like that to everyday life because most days we are eating something like that. And so she talked about the potato chips and where it comes from and how they grow. I guess the unit that they were talking about was the grow at different growing seasons and things like that. And they were actually, the lesson was they were going to go out and till the ground in the garden to get ready for the planting of the potatoes. And so she tied it into the bag of potato chips and where they come from and how you grow them and when you need to plant them and what time of the year and the weather and all that type of things. And so she was able to connect with them, and they were all engaged, all 6 of them. They were engaged and they were ready to go, and so they went out and got on the tractor, and she took them down to the garden down back. One other thing she did, it was on a Monday, so I guess I don't know if this would be an activating strategy since it's every Monday. That was one of my questions I had. Was every Monday after the weekend they come and they have to check the greenhouse, and I don't know if that would count as something like an activating strategy in that type of class. But every Monday they had to go in and I guess over the weekends the plants dry out, so they have to rewater the plants every Monday. So that was one of the questions I was going to ask.
That'd be more like along that
like a bell work type thing. Okay, but yeah, it was good. They were engaged, and I like how she used the fact that the kid, I guess she was gambling the fact that he was going to walk in with a bag of chips, but after so many classes of them always walking in with a bag of chips, she knew that it was going to happen that way. So
it made for a great lesson. I'm sure Paul will give you a bag of chips and set it up ahead of time.
Yeah, you can always have one. And
all right, perfect. Thank you. All right, Ms. Garcia, you had your chance. Your breath.
Breathe.
No, it's fine. I just have a cold. Not one of the cameras, but Miss Getz was available when I ended up going to observe, but we met later and she showed it to me. But I did observe her on another time, so I'm going to kind of talk about both of those. I'll talk about the one I did see and then the one that I didn't see. The first one where I did see her was she had in her classroom that day a video of a bridge collapsing. And she does several of her activated, both of them were really similar. She does a shock effect because she's trying to, as he talked about before, present safety to the students and try to really impact them because that's the drudge of what they have to learn. They always want to come in and just do the hands-on, she said, and they don't want to learn the safety aspects they have to need in order to be able to do the hands-on. So this particular time they are getting ready for a welding lesson, and they were showing the things that went wrong or could go wrong if people do not take the necessary precautions to follow the procedures or the correct procedures. And the actual bridge falling down was a simulation, but it was still gave the same effect. That was the one I actually saw. The other one that we talked about this week was she had a lesson on electrical wire safety. And EQ was what can happen to you if you do not take the necessary precautions. And she showed videos of actual people who have been injured from being electrocuted. Not like death ones, but the actual one. And the one she showed was pictures were up where it takes the path of least resistance, and it had he had been electrocuted on the wrist, and it had come out the thumb, and it showed the damage to his hand as a result of that.
Thank you. That was painless.
Kind of.
Mr. Purvis.
All right.
Very well, yeah.
Let's hope I don't hit the camera. There we go. There's not an X marks the spot up here?
No, sir,
All right.
no photos.
I took a big stretch and went to see Laura Howard. And one thing I do know is this, is you can have all the activating strategies you want, but if you don't have control of the classroom, you know, none of them are going to do anything for you. And so I knew good and well that hers would be that way. So I get in there, and it is an honors world history class, and about half of them are missing. So it seems to be fairly common that we've seen upper level kids, and we've seen very few of them. But I get in there, and she has a question on the board, and the board is, and she hasn't taught this yet, so it's predictive. You know, it's based off what, you know, they know. And so it says, predict, you know, write a statement of why do you think that Rome was able to overtake the Greek civilization. And so she put them in groups and told them, you know, I want you to write 2 or 3 statements in your group to tell me why you think that's true. And she said, I want you then to go to the board and write those statements, you know, one below the other. And so I'm looking around on the walls, and one of the things she has on the wall is an anchor chart. And the anchor chart says predictive behaviors throughout history. You know, and I'm looking and I'm thinking, is she connecting that? And so they write these statements, and you can look, and as a history teacher, some of them were correct and some of them were incorrect. It was easy to tell. And so then she told them, she says, we've discussed this chart up here. She pointed at the same one. She says, I want you to get back together with your group. I want you to look at the statements you made and tell me which of these, according to those predictive behaviors throughout history, may not make any sense. And so what they did is they started discussing, and I was listening to them discuss it amongst each other, and they would say, look, this was our answer, but it doesn't fit in that pattern. So this may not be a true statement. If she wants us to make one true statement, then we need to tie what we think we know to something that is proven to be correct throughout history. And so then they come back, and they've all got it down to one statement, and she gets them to tell what their statement is and then to back it up. So they're going to take their prior knowledge, they're going to use this anchor chart with predicted behaviors throughout history, and they're going to come up with the one statement for each group that actually makes the most sense. And I really liked it because she did all of this before she had said a single word about Rome. So in essence, they were taking, if you know middle school history, they take middle school world history in 6th and 7th grade, which means they haven't had it in 8th, and so she's teaching a group of 10th graders. So what they think they know is kind of old. And so it was a good way, I thought, of seeing, you know, you're talking about taking the things they know, their prior knowledge. Their prior knowledge isn't always as deep as you might think it is. And this was a good way to me to see what they thought they knew, and then to look at something that was true and say, maybe this is wrong. So I thought she did a good job of that.
Excellent, thank you. Ms. Cotton?
Okay. Yes, very much. I went to Mr. May's room, and the activating strategy, well, we were working on, I'm actually in there, we were working on the map of Europe, and so we did a mnemonic device on the map to teach the map of Europe to the students. So some of it I kind of switched up to make it a little more interesting. But in order for them to learn the countries in Europe, we just did, like, you know, Italy, they pretty much knew Italy was the root shape. So we said, Italy, give them a blank map. So you say Italy, and then this is Switzerland. So you say Italy switched boots, trying to be fancy, so that's France, for Spain, in front of is Portugal. So if you give them that mnemonic thing to go by, it's easier for them to remember the country, where the countries are located at. Maybe if I would have it, it'd be better for everybody to see. So then you start with where Denmark is at. It looks like a pin pointing up. So then a mark was put on Norway saying non-sufficient funds. That gives you Norway, Sweden, Finland for Russia. So that tells you where Russia is. Then you can say, y'all see how this paper shaking, right? You can say you was Hungary. So Germany ate Czech Republic, and Poland witnessed it. Then they added romaine lettuce, gave up Greece for Turkey to keep from having a bulge, which would be Bulgaria. So you do the little mnemonic things, and that helps the children remember easier where the country is. So you know, you go through that little story in your head, so you know which country goes where. That's pretty much what we did. And then our EQ was what physical features of Europe determine where people settle, and how does this sometimes lead to division. And we discussed Europe having 160 ethnic groups and multiple religions.
Thank you.
I hope I'm finished.
You're
Yes.
As mnemonic devices, anything you can do to kick it off. If you ever been in Becky Futch's class, they sing. Becky has a song that she sings that brings it all around, and I'll be in there with 12th graders, and they're just singing away, and the kid you think would never sing in public is singing like crazy in class because they just keep doing that. So, thank you. Ms. Pendleton.
Speaking of Becky Futch, that's where I went.
Okay, did you have a song?
We did not sing that day, but I picked Becky Futch selfishly because I teach algebra 2 and she does too, and I thought she taught at second block, and I wanted to go in and get ideas for my activating strategy when I was observed. But she teaches calculus, which, whoa, I mean, but anyway, it's been a while. But I was excited, I remembered a little bit, but anyway, it was very interesting. She gave the students 6 intervals, and she told them to solve them. And they all looked like they would work, but only 5 worked with the existing techniques that they knew, and 1 did not. And so they got in partners, and they worked it out. And she said, did y'all have any problems? And they were like, yeah, we got one, and da-da-da-da-da. And why she did it like this, because it looked like it would work, but then when they go to solve it, it doesn't. And so she transformed them into teaching them how to use logarithms when something doesn't work. So it was really good.
Okay. Excellent. Excellent. Good job. All right.
Fourth block, I had to do mine during fourth block, due to other things I do during planning. So I went to go see Mr. Mitchell. I know we really went far branching out in the math department, as you can see. But went to go see Mr. Mitchell, and it was obviously something I would not expect Coach Mitchell to be doing.
Singing?
Well, you'll see. So one of the things he had, when I came in there the day he was like discovering it, I walk into his room and I hear the song Get Tricky With It, right? And I'm going, okay, that's weird. So I walk in and I see it, I'm like, what you doing? He quickly hits pause on his thing and like turns over and he's like, oh, I'm just trying to figure out something for a lesson. I'm like, oh, okay. And I asked him like what day I was going to be coming in and whatnot. So I come in yesterday, Monday, and the whole point of it was there was a video made by this school. It's in Ohio, Westerville High School, and they've done tons of them. And one of this is called Get Triggy With It, because he was teaching trigonometry to his pre-calc students. And yeah, they did a trigonometry video that was just basically going over the rules of SOHCAHTOA. He likes using, I mean, he showed him the mnemonic device of the hippie deal. I could never remember that thing, so I never used it. But he just kind of went through that with the kids, and they knew that. They memorized that, they knew that. But this was just a different device to help them out and identify what they need to know. The best thing I would say about it was his questioning after the video. He showed it to them once and kind of just gave them the opportunity to write down what they remembered, what they noticed. Then he went back and did it again. And as he showed it the next time, he paused it and asked like purposeful questioning afterwards and said, okay, why do you think they used that specific lyric to go with that? And kids were able to like make the connections and see, well, that's an easier way to remember that, or anything along those lines. And it was funny because a little bit later on, like during the thing, you heard like a couple of the kids, there was maybe 10, 11 kids in the class. You could hear a couple of them just like nodding their head and humming the song as they were going through and working on the projects. But yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, very good. Christine?
So I actually did go on a venture from the math department. I came all the way down and watched Miss Sawyer in the art room. And so what they did was when she first started, she had the original warm-up and we were standing outside and she was like, this is not our activating strategy. And I said, I know it's not, I know you got something planned. But so every day the students walk in the room and they know that they have to draw something and they have a sketch that they have to go through. And then after that, she actually starts the lesson. And when she started her activating strategy, she had students picking up 3 Post-it notes as they walked in the door to use. And when they were actually there, they labeled them using 3 different techniques or themes of different art. Students have never seen these themes before. They've never talked about them. But what they did was they wrote down they wrote down 3 words. I think it was like realism, impressionism, and then something else. And there were words that they had heard the root before. They know what real means. They know what an impression is. And so the students had to label different posters of art around the room as what they thought it was. So she was making one-on-one connections with them. What does impressionism sound like? What do you think it might mean? Which one of these might be making an impression? So they were making observations and trying to build those connections before she went into the actual learning activity where they took notes and practiced what is the definition of impressionism, what is the definition of realism. But okay. It was just a little sorting activity.
Just making them think and make the connections and seeing what they're...
Before the connections were given to them.
Excellent, good job, Sawyer. I mean, you watched. Tracy?
Well, in one respect, you can say I got out of my comfort zone, and in another way, it's like it's going into the zone that I am entering, because I went to go see Tammy Walker in English, and I'm as far away from an English person as you can be. Special ed, but what she was doing was she was talking about story plot. And of course, she's got that bubbly personality, and it's almost infectious. I almost wish that I could have that bubbly personality, but I cannot be a Miss Tammy Walker. Just no way. But in this story plot, they had it traced out. And it looked like this. And then they had several words that they had to go in and put in the proper place. And it was exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, and resolution. So they had to match those words to where they belonged on this diagram here and define them, but also to come back and think about just stories in general. You know, think about their life. You know, where do you see yourself, you know, as you're going through life? You know, here you are at a certain point and then something happens, and, you know, just trying to get them to think through what's going on in their world and transform it into, hey, these are the types of, you know, where we're going to go is to figure out about this. And some kids like, I don't know what you want here. And, you know, she came over and it's like, well, think about that you're telling me something about yourself, and then something happens. And then based on what happens, there's this high point. Well, tell me what the high point's going to be. Well, after that high point happens, you know, then things start slowing down and all. Just trying to get them to think through the different levels there. and they're gonna be applying those into what they're reading.
And that would be the vocabulary of the standard that they would be doing. Good, thank you.
All right, so I drew Miss Fussell as my person to observe, and she happened to be in the same class that I teach later on in the day, Mr. Tucker's American Lit class. So setting the stage, okay, they had already started reading The Crucible. We'd already gone through Act 1, which is where the girls of Salem got caught practicing witchery in the woods, trying to summon the siblings of one of them that like lost 7 siblings or something like that. And they stopped there. So this day opens when the kids receive kind of a prediction chart. What do you think is going to happen over the course of this next act? And of course, Mr. Tucker and Miss Fussell went through by guiding them through thought, by giving them one example. And it was, you know, the girls are going to accuse more people of being witches. Okay, so just kind of lead them into that because, you know, kids, their prediction skills on something that happened back in the Puritan days might not be as accurate, you know. But, you know, they led them into that train of thought. And the kids kind of picked up on that, like, okay, so why would they do that? And they kind of got some guidance going into that too. So then other things that some of the students came up with is that the girl's going to get in trouble for lying. Eventually what goes around comes around, you know, bad stuff's going to start happening. And then somehow or another, all these other names that are dropped, there's going to be some kind of vengeance, you know, we heard a little bit of everything. And there were some other things to kind of predict, but that was pretty much what the kids were latching on to. Because, I mean, it's just Puritanism. The kids are still, we're teaching them the Puritanism stuff, but the prediction of actions and consequences, what do you think is going to happen based on these actions? That's what we're trying to get to the kids. It doesn't matter what the context is, it really all kind of happens about the same throughout history. So it went over pretty well. Some students picked it up fairly quickly, you know, and were able to relate those things to modern day times when somebody lies and starts blaming other people. And some kids just, because it was back in the Puritan days, I don't know what happened, you know. But that was the activating strategy for the beginning of Act 2. So,
Thank you.
yep.
Ms. Mead, I'm going to give you a break, and I'll call you out on this one yet. You weren't here for the first one. All right, so I'm going back there. Mr. McLean, you good?
Well, I started off on a PD assignment that turned into a parent-teacher conference. I drew Coach Williams, who does credit recovery online, and everything from art. He said the U.S. history is kind of hard to have one activity that relates to everybody. Plus, it's online, it's kind of hard to build excitement there, so we end up talking about his 4th block, which is baseball. And terminology, he calls them keys. You know, anytime they're looking at a skill set, something they're trying to build upon, one he mentioned was LCD, low, close, and down. They started off watching a video, and I'm assuming something related to where they're wanting to go eventually. Not in the beginning process, the final product. Somebody that's accomplished in that area. So the whole group gets an idea of where we're going with this, but then on a daily basis, activating strategies deal with what they want to accomplish that day. All right? It requires building upon itself. You know, he's not doing an activating strategy for the final product, just today's skill. Some of the things that I picked up on, skills related to the day's activity, big picture. The kids have to see where they're going with it. You know, so that buys them in a little bit. And that was basically the thing. They see the video where we're trying to get to, and then the daily activities is what it's gonna take to get us a little bit closer. And yes, Aiden came up in the conversation.
I was imagining that's where we were headed with that. Coach, did you get a chance? I don't know.
Yes. Well, of course, you know, I've been struggling with this PE thing. And so with me being a smart individual, which y'all don't believe that I'm smart, but I am, I Googled it. And Google talks about, and you know, I just kind of read over and tried to come up with it. I'm not 100% sure if it's a true activating strategy, but when you deal with athletes or whatever, it's more, it seems like cause is a motivating factor. You know, whatever you can get, whatever story you can tell them that day to get them to lock in and do their best. So Coach Edwards and I got to talking, and Coach Edwards came up with the idea of this, he with his class is doing a speed walking class, because I was listening to some of y'all are being blessed with 6 students, 11. Coach Edwards got 46 students. You know, so it's a little bit different animal, but it still can be done. So what he did was he challenged his class, and let me go back. I found out that the most motivating factor for athletes or people that's in being active is time off. Even with us, as much as we like to work, but we work a little bit harder that week before Christmas break because we looking for that time off. All right, so that's what that's the idea that Coach Edwards had. So he had challenged his kids, if you can walk without running a mile in 12 minutes or less, the reward would be you will only have to walk 20 minutes tomorrow versus 45 minutes. And you wouldn't believe how their eyes lit up just for the time off. So Coach Edwards' activating strategy was to challenge them, you know, with time off by working hard this day. And I felt like that was what we would consider activating strategy. What y'all think? Mm-hmm. Pretty good.
And Coach did mention storytelling too. Storytelling is always motivating.
It's kind of hard to do
Or activating.
without running.
Yeah, storytelling is always an activating strategy. Anytime you do that, which is kind of what Mr. McLean was heading towards too. You show the end result of the story box. So good, thank you. Let's see. Caesar, did you get a chance?
Yes, sir. Well, I went to see Mr. Tucker as well in his class. They were working in a book called The Crucible. It's an activity, I think, as well. And they were working a prediction chart. And the student, they have to use their own graphic organizer. It was divided in 4 columns. The first 2 columns, they have to indicate what will happen. They have to set a prediction about that, but based on a proof. The book they are reading has some patterns that it will repeat something that he was saying as well, the actions consequence. So the student for 5 minutes, they have to guess, educated guess, what will happen next before they start reading the next, chapter in the book. So after that, some volunteers, they say, some suggestion, okay, I think will happen this based on what happened before. And especially the accusations, there were certain points that you would see in this. What I see the students, they were really engaged in the class. They really want to know what will happen next in the history, and somehow I think it's a good way to engage the student in the class, try to, okay, putting them curious. Okay, I thought that will happen, but I really want to know what will happen next. So I think it was really interesting in the class, and I could take it from well and in the future.
Thank you. You know, English language arts, even though it's Puritanism and they're reading the Crucible, the standard isn't the Crucible or Puritanism, it's inference, prediction, and all of that. So that's how they cover those standards. So that the book, the Crucible, or the theme, Puritanism, is really just the unit overview, but the standards are covering inference and, plot, or in this case, plot development, etc. So that would have been a plot development standard that she would have been working on. Thank you, Susan. Look, you're already go, man. You're overachiever. I didn't have to call your name, man. I didn't even call a name. Love it.
I observed Miss Carter, and she was teaching her one of her web design classes, which I know in the same department, but none of us teach the same thing. Or very few of us teach the same thing. And immediately she reviewed the vocabulary that they had covered the week before and explained their daily assignment, what they were supposed to do, and I tried to get up and leave, and she said, that's not it. I had to sit back down. So when she did the actual activating strategy, she covered and wrote down the standard. And I liked how she wrote down the nouns and verbs. She would ask the students for synonyms rather than just a definition of the word, which I think helps a larger group of the kids to understand what the standard means and what they're actually referencing. And she also was able to kind of review some stuff that they talked about before, learned about before. But the next lesson was actual coding of a website. And she, to get the kids interested, she showed one of the state placing competitions. I think it was actually Ethan's that placed in one of their state FBLA competitions. And so showed the code. I think it was several pages long and several sheets over of the different code for just one web page, which is a very pretty clean web page. So as she would show, she talked about a few of the lines. Some of the kids recognized some stuff, but most had no idea, which it just looked like a bunch of numbers and letters. And then she was able to flip over and show the actual website, and then she referenced a little bit to show where those lines went on the web page. That was pretty much it. Kind of drew them in by showing something somebody from Cook County did and placed in a state competition. So that was pretty neat to get some interest. And then my favorite quote of hers was a student said, "Miss Carter, my computer is acting stupid," and she responded by saying, "Jiggle it."
Jiggle it.
Tommy, you heard that story, that the most trouble I was a teacher that got mad at me the worst one time. We were talking about vocabulary, and all she had them doing was writing the word and looking up the definitions. It's kind of explaining there's other things you could do, and I'm trying to have this conversation with her. And she was being very, I hate to use the word passive aggressive, but very passive aggressive, didn't want to try something different. Was just kind of arguing. I said, she goes, "Well, just tell me how I go find, how can I find activating? I don't know how to find it." I said, "Just Google it." And it was a legitimate calm answer, but boy, she got hot. She never spoke to me again. Thought I was being a smart aleck, but Googling it was the answer.
Yeah.
So anyway, sorry. But when you're jiggling it and Googling it, I'm all Googled out. Yes, ma'am, if you're ready.
Ready? Okay. All right, my activating strategy comes from Clemmy Foster. And she has 27 kids, and it was a health class. And she was talking about macronutrients, and so that is protein and carbohydrates and lipids or fats. And so she starts her lesson out, but you can tell they have some background knowledge already of what they're talking about. And so this particular lesson was about fats, and she had brown bags and had different snacks on the brown bags. And then you could see after they had been on the brown bags for a while which ones actually had a greasy stain under it. And so that was the strategy she used to pique their interest in how do fats act in your body differently than the other two macronutrients, and it got them engaged.
Excellent, thank you. Mr. Novak. I always try to save the best for last, but I figured I'd throw that.
That's why Kelly's gonna go last. I went to see Mr. King, and this was his first day in his new classroom, so he didn't have his learning goal when he didn't have his
essential question.
He didn't have it up there yet. But the kids had just finished taking their summative assessment the day before, so he was starting a new lesson. And he did have written on the board, what is a polynomial? And so he had these little, I guess they're tickets, little slips of paper, and he had 12 of them, and he handed them out to students as pairs. He let the kids pick their own person to work with. And he gave each pair these 12 little slips of paper, and on each slip of paper was a an equation. And he told the students to look at the equations and then to determine if there was a certain patterns that you see and put these different equations into two different stacks. And so you just let the kids go on their own, and they were discussing, the kids were talking, some were off task, but some, you know how it is. But so after they had some discussions and they separated it into two piles, they would raise their hand and he would come over and he'd check their stack. And when he got through with all the students, then he went on to the smartboard and he wrote what were the 5 rules for polynomials to identify a polynomial equation. So then he asked the students, go back through your stacks and see what you have versus these 5 rules. So they went back through their stacks and they adjusted their piles, and then when they were finished, they raised their hand and he went back and checked the stacks with them. And, the kids were engaged, and I think they got something out of it off of the start of a whole new lesson.
Excellent, thank you. Ms. Lindsay?
I went and visited Mr. Wall. He teaches environmental science, and he was starting a new standard, and the standard was construct an argument to predict changes in biomass, biodiversity, and complexity within ecosystems in terms of ecological succession. So his activating strategy was he asked the kids if they had realized what was going on in Australia, if they had seen the news, and most of them had agreed that they did. So they just interacted a little bit with their prior knowledge on that. And he said, okay, we're going to go through 2 video clips. They were from ABC News. One was about the impacts that the Australian wildfires have had on humans versus the koalas. So after watching those 2 videos, you know, they were very interested, not so much with the human aspect, but for the pets, you know, the koalas. So after watching those, he put 6 different he put some questions up on his PowerPoint, and he asked the kids to work on these 6 questions with their shoulder partner. One of the questions was, will the koalas ever recover from this devastating wildfire? Will humans have to take care of these creatures from now on? Will the koalas' habitat recover? And if the habitat recovers, when will it recover? And if the habitat does recover, will it be the same? So they had 6 minutes. He has a little timer up on the screen. They had 6 minutes for themselves and their shoulder partner to go through, jot down their answers, turn in their answers, and he was pacing back and forth, up and down the aisles. And I was activated because, you know, that's something that we see it's rampant today. So I enjoyed it thoroughly. So.
And making that connection to relevance. So excellent, excellent. Thank you. Katie?
Yeah, he really didn't say it. He kind of bottom of the barrel. But so I went in to see Shelley Phillips because one, I kind of wanted to see what new stuff she had in her room. And so I went in there and my eye had so overwhelming for me. But her activating strategy was great. And it's one that I was telling, I think we were talking about it at lunch, or maybe I was just telling somebody, is one that I wanted to start doing. So she called it the hot seat. So she's got in her room, you know, she's got a bunch of different seating areas, but she's got some desks in one side. And so she was working with half the kids, and her student teacher was doing something else that she had to do for her class. So it wasn't whole class. And she had red pieces of paper stuck underneath just random desks. The kids said, go sit in the desk area. So they sat down. She said, okay, look underneath your desk. And so some had red seats. They were in the hot seat. And they had 2 vocabulary words that they had probably heard of, like in previous classes. I don't think she was discussing them right away. And so they had to get with a group and discuss what they thought the difference between those terms was. And what I liked most about it is I was watching her and how she was interacting with the kids. Like, I took a lot of notes. But the one kid, whoever was in the hot seat, had to give the answers. They couldn't all shout out. But they were all discussing, all engaged. And so she said, if you don't know the answer, that's fine. We haven't talked about it yet. But she always corrected their misconceptions in a very positive way. And she would explain what the difference was. And then what I really liked is she went back and said, okay, one more time. What was dynamic, whatever? Okay.
what was this? So she made them restate it after she had done it. And I know me, generally, if I'm kind of going over vocabulary, we go over it really quickly, and then I'm like, okay, y'all got it? Good. And then we go on. But she took time very purposefully to go back over that, so I made notes for things that I need to do when I'm going back over. And there she said that things like, good guess, let me add a little bit more information. So she was pre-teaching that vocabulary before they actually had to use it. And they knew a lot, or were in the ballpark for a lot of their stuff.
Thank you. And by allowing them that time to kind of think it through, words that they say, oh, I don't know that word, immediately shut down. Through that discussion, they can come up with that. So thank you. Excellent job from everybody. I appreciate you getting out there and doing that. We took a survey. All right, transitioning. We took a survey, or I asked you all to take a survey. We have about 68 folks on staff. 47 filled it out, which in surveys, that's a high percentage. Still would rather have 100% because since everybody's actively involved in having to do help, if you don't participate in the survey, you don't get your voice heard. So we ask that you put it out there. I do read every single comment. I can't fix absolutely everything, but I can make things that show up as the major problems and then try to fix those first, and we keep moving forward with the help. Help is here to happen. We have to do something with that time. I keep going back to tutoring cannot be voluntary. You must tutor. You must get into smaller groups. But what I did was through the survey, I asked purposeful questions that kind of narrowed down to where the perceptions were. And you were to answer on a Likert scale of 1 to 5, 1 being, horrible, 5 being excellent. And then I kind of said, okay, if they answered a 3, that's kind of taking a neutral stance. A 1 and 2. 1s and 2s were low. There wasn't a whole lot to that. Not many people did. So they did 1s and 2s were real low. The absolute hating of it. The middle group was generally pretty standard. And then I looked at the 4s and 5s and how much agreement on the extremely good and good area. So looking at 4s and 5s, if I took question number 1, the help process allows me the time to work on gap closure with my students. 70.1% of the people agreed with that. Now they still gave me comments, both positive and negative, which is what I wanted, and then I would go through the comments. So what I did was I categorized for today on the survey, on the 8 questions I had, I said, well, I can't fix everything. Well, obviously 70.1% of the people putting into this said that it will help close the gap, so they agree with that. Now, there might be things wrong within that, and that's what some of the other questions were. So if I look at question number 2, that was one of my low ones. Only 36.2 felt really strong about this one. The help process allows me to lower my class size to adjust the needs. That throughout the thing was an issue. Every single comment found a way to get back to, not every single comment, every single question I asked, somebody had a way to put in that, look, we're not getting our class size down to where we need to work with. That was a repetitive thing. Remember, question number 3 was the other one. So you can see only 36.2 agreed or highly agreed. 40% help process allowed me to provide more challenging extensions was the second lowest. But what the comments really were in here was, I use this time as, I've had to use help for missing work and reviewing tasks. There was more gap filling is where they're finding you're spending the time. So that's why that one had a lower one. They're saying I'm not getting to the extensions because I'm having a lot of time on the others. So they were the 2 critical red ones, okay? But it really does boil down to a time issue and not getting enough kids in the class that I have to focus on. So that was the 2 questions that were below 50%. Then I went to the 50 to 70% of agreement and high agreement. So more than half agreed, but it's still not 70% where I'd love to be. So then I had question number 5, was in the yellow. The extra time that help provides is beneficial. So 68.1% feel that it is beneficial time of the ones that responded. But some are saying it's not beneficial because they don't have the class size that they want to get. And then more students aren't utilizing incentive passes, which got to the next topics of they get an incentive pass but they're not going to, and they'd rather stay with theirs because there isn't enough incentive time. So from the themes, I'm sharing these and I'm talking fast, and I will share all these documents with you guys. It's not hidden. Question 7 was in the yellow. It's more than 50%, but the incentive pass process is effective. It's the passes are the part. It's not effective because there's nowhere to go, is really what the main answer was on a lot of that stuff. And my overall satisfaction with the help process, number 8, that's still in the yellow. The overall satisfaction is at about a 68. I'd much rather see that up in the 70s, okay, which would be a nice number. So we're close, but we're not there yet. The 2 that turned out green, or 3 that turned out green, were question number 1, the help process allows me time. That's the one I showed you before. It does give you the time, nobody's arguing with that fact, it's just not used properly. The attendance process, this is one I thought was funny. I would have not put the attendance process is effective at 72%. That's just me personally, but the perception is that it's there. And then the third one, the time and frequency for club meetings, number 6. So it does provide the club. So, you know, the club part's solved, obviously. People feel strongly about that. The help time is there. It's going to work if we fix certain things. The common themes throughout the whole process were these. Unable to decrease class size was probably the thing I saw the most. And that was even stated in one of the ones that were read. If I have a class, I'm not able to get it down to the size I need to work with the groups I need. Advertising of incentives was a frequent and highly commented on thing. And when I say advertising of it, yeah, we send out our emails. Joy and I would say, oh, we advertise pretty good. You're supposed to be hanging it in your classrooms. But the kids still don't know where they're supposed to go. So we don't know what classrooms is it hanging in, which rooms is it being shared with. So we're going to talk about that. And then options for incentives. There's nowhere for them to go, people felt, so they'd just rather sit with you. Okay? Now, that's a problem I'd love to have. That means I've got a good relationship with my kids. If they'd rather sit with me and not go to the incentive. But by not going to the incentive, they're not giving you a group size to work with. So that was part of the problem. To a lesser extent, what I saw through here is I categorized all of this into one: teacher error, teacher understanding, and teacher apathy. Were oftentimes where a teacher would blame other teachers for it. If they did it right, then it would work better. So that was a common theme, but much lesser extent than those top 3. Okay? So what do we say with that? I said, well, I've got to find a way to help this. help. It can't go away. That's the non-negotiable. It's not going to go away. But if we're going to put that time in there, how do we use it to the best of the ability? Some of the things that when we sat there and I spent the Christmas break looking at it, that I felt what we were seeing was that the concept of when I have my day in help, for you guys it's right now, of the day that I don't have my kids, okay? Many of us are saying, how can I help myself during that time? And we've got to look at this differently. We've got to look at how can I help everybody else reduce their class sizes on the day that we're here. And I don't think that's on our part presenting it, okay? So what I kind of did, I revamped this paradigm of this period, which is Tuesdays for you guys, right? Tuesday, second block. It's not about how you can make your things better. It's how are you going to help others minimize or maximize the opportunity to get their class size down. So combining the decreasing class size with the advertising component of all of this, I present this. Let me go to Tuesdays. Okay? It needs tweaking and fixing. Joy's on there now. These are from when we called classrooms yesterday, people that responded to it. You know, for example, we give the help schedules, but nobody responds to it. I'm not going to say people don't read emails, but sorry guys, but people don't read emails. We're grown folks, but we don't read emails. And that's not your fault. We've gotten so many emails in our world anymore that it's overwhelming with everything else. Okay? So we've got to work on that. One of the answers is we're going to make a chart from here till the end of the year. That's where the kids can go. Now, how it adjusts, we'll talk about that, and people throughout this are going to send me suggestions to continuously improve the process. Not to say I'm not going to do it or we're not going to do it. The process is here. How do we make it better so it helps everybody? So we started categorizing some things. So I've got your period here, and I may have people missing some things. Think in your head, it's no longer about how I make my stuff better during the time that I have my planning. It's how I help everybody else in the building. So Matt Holiday, club activities are open to all students that are active members of the organization, no incentive pass required. So rule number 1, the hard hit that I got to take right now until somebody comes up with a better idea. Elective folks, take a deep breath when I'm about to talk. You're keeping your kids. What that means is PE, was able to give 5 incentive passes, and they went out, and they got so many kids, they can just keep them in PE and play longer for that half hour. Let them come down there and shoot the basketball. It's an open gym. Ag, art, well, keep the kids. Right now, when we're talking about the core, and I know this hurts people's feelings, every single one of you I embrace, and you're all just as important. But moving people into this community, building businesses, supporting our community, it's still the scores on our core. And I know that's a hard concept when you teach ag, you're just as important as everybody else, but as a community, we still need to bring the school grades up, okay? So right now, the core is going to be the classes that get incentives. We're going to up the incentive passes from 5 to 10 within the core. Why does that number work? On an average, there are 530 to 580 kids in core classes every period of our 850, okay? So I need to reduce that 530 by at least half. So if I take that and I have 23 core classes in a period, giving them 10 passes each reduces 230 kids right off the top. They can get out of their room, okay? So they can get to the core group. Why is that important? Because I need those people to start figuring out, because I'm going to be calling Novak in and Lindsay in, showing them physical science and say, okay, here are the children that passed your class but failed the test. The kid got a 75, but a 69. We have more than half of the 120 some kids that failed the EOC are in that 62 to 69 range. They're so close. That's who we've got to focus on. I hate to say it because you've got the kid who's just failing your class, and he's not passing your class, and he's not passing a test. But I think some folks feel like that's where they spend all their time. That group in the middle, you've got to be able to help. And I got to get class sizes so they can work on those. So Matt Holly, he runs TSA Club. So PE, electives. A kid who is in a club, even though you're not getting incentive passes, remember, you don't need it to go to clubs. Everybody goes to clubs on that day, okay? So during that time, if you've got a club kid, they can go to their club. When I say keep your kids, you don't get incentive passes, but send your kids to the club. Ruth Anna does her ensemble during that time. Okay? So Ruth Anna, you've got that ensemble, no matter where they are, they can come. Okay? Whether they're in the core or in the regular. Then I go to incentive activities are available to those students who receive an incentive pass from their core curriculum teacher. Passes are required. They've got to have to come to you with a pass. This is the area where we didn't have enough opportunities here for people to lower their class size. Because again, I go back to, we were kind of thinking about how do I keep making my classes better. So, and I'm not picking on math. Okay, I'm not, but I'm just going to use you as an example. You guys did a lot of intervention during that time. Okay? The problem was it was helping your classes, but it wasn't helping me reduce everybody else's. So I'm giving you the 10 passes now so that you can reduce your class on those other 3 days, but I need you to pick up the slack for us on these days. That's the conceptual thing behind it. So like Kelly Mead, you're in here, aren't you, Kelly? Kelly, I haven't given you anything yet, okay, because you were thinking about it. You're going to get with us so we can get this filled in. This is going to become a poster at the school. It's going to be posted in the libraries, the cafeteria, so the kids know on Mondays this is where I go. I'm not going to just show up in PE because I think PE would be fun. They got enough kids. I'm not letting them get their kids out. There should be no pass to PE. They should only be able to go to these green areas or a club. So Mead's got that Bledsoe. She's going to send me her stuff. Oh, SPED people, just kind of go, okay, he's going to talk to us soon. Okay? Folsom, you got your sports highlight videos. I don't care if 50 kids go to him. If he can handle 50 kids and show some great videos, that's what I want him to do. That's what I'm telling all of you. Don't overthink this when it's your day. Your job now is to say, how can I help the other teachers reduce their class size? Garcia, you're going to get with me. Mary Garcia, Margie, Social Club. You've been going to that. I'm keeping you there.
Yeah.
All right. Heather Lindsay's going to do her forensics. Now, folks, if you're doing forensics on your day, and some other kids you need them to come in to do some extra work for you, get them there. That's up to you. Work that out with the other teachers. I am not stopping you from getting kids into your room that you need to see during that time. But do something else too. You can have Uno games going on and tutoring 3 kids over here. That's all I'm asking. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But get more kids there. Heather Lindsay, Novak's doing video games. He's got a couple computers. He's going to let them come in there and play video games. Okay? I know that's a stretch for Novak to release that control, but good job, Novak. I'm proud of you.
You're going to have 150 kids.
I want to play that.
I am putting numbers on here. And we're going to say he's got 20 kids and he can control in there. If he feels comfortable doing 30, put 30 in there. But when your room is full, cut it off.
Oh, you gave me 100 kids?
Yes.
You know, my glasses today.
Purvis, you're getting with me. Constance. Constance is doing life skills, healthy cooking, interviewing skills, how to iron a shirt. You're going to have to get out and probably recruit some kids because if it's not working, we're going to have to do something different. Joe Wilson's doing card games. Ziegler's doing chess fun. Okay? Social club for McLean. All right, McLean's, that should say 100 also. Okay,
So we'll have 200 in there.
200.
100.
How many, have you seen how many people are coming? It ain't gonna change. What's happened now is we're giving them a whole lot of other things to go to. Okay? You know that Thursdays are the day they're all gonna go to the social club, because that's when the donut truck's there. Daughtry's doing her drop everything and read. Pendleton is gonna be doing Sudoku puzzles. She's gonna continue with that. And Kelly Taylor at special ed. Now, special ed, here's what you're doing. This is Tuesday group, right? All right. Special ed, on Tuesday, I still need you to give me an incentive, just like everybody else. Because on your days, you should not be doing IEPs. We don't want IEPs going on during this time. It's not a planning period for you. You're part of the group too. That was one of the places I lost a lot of teachers, because I was doing my math. I'm saying I got all these teachers, then I realized, wait, I've got Ewing and Hoffman together, and they're both sitting in the same room with kids, and that just put 2 teachers in there, and my numbers didn't get better. So on Tuesday, you're helping the whole team. You're going to do something where you bring kids in, okay? On your other 3 days, who are you with on Mondays during this time?
Jenkins.
Okay, I don't want you with Jenkins. I want
Can
you to
you
now
tell her
work,
that? I don't want to tell her that. Can you tell her
not during that half hour.
that? I know. Can you tell her?
Tell Jenkins she owes me a favor already. Tell Jenkins she already owes me a favor. During that half hour sped, folks, I want you working your caseload. I want you getting out and supporting all of them so that you can see your kids individually and really get to know your
Okay,
kids.
so we don't need to be with our content people.
Don't be with your content period during that time.
Okay.
They can handle it. If they got 5 kids, why do they need you there?
Right.
If I'm doing all this stuff,
They're doing too.
tell them to stop being silly. Tell them to stop.
So all the students will come to their general ed teacher, even if there's a co-teacher in the room?
Correct.
And then that co-teacher will be in their office?
Now, I don't want them in office, I want them somewhere.
Okay, but
With a
polling
group.
as needed?
And not as needed, they're gonna give me a group. And I'll talk to you a little bit about how that works in a minute.
But not
But yes.
necessarily from the class, that is that day's help?
Correct.
Okay.
They should be covering some study skills with that group, some individual things that they need to work
With our caseload you're talking
with your caseload.
about? I got you.
You're
We
working
have
your
to do
caseload on the other 3 days because
So
you got that teacher for that whole first period. I want you working your caseload.
That's extremely helpful because we only
Correct.
have them on Friday and they do all
Correct.
this progress monitoring.
With all the progress monitoring stuff you've got to do, you don't have enough time to get it done.
Okay.
The teacher, if we're getting their class size smaller, they handle that in 30 minutes. All right. Scrolling down some more. Then we got this new category because part of what we were reading in this whole thing was, what do I do with that kid that's the constant pain in the butt that's just not helping? Well, some people solve that problem real easy. They just wrote them an incentive path. That doesn't help anything because our failure rate is still too high. But it's not about that always. So we're creating now what I call my tier 2 interventions. And we have to work on perfecting this. But Pettiford, for example, has ISS. Well, during that time, Docs may be able to take some kids that are constantly getting incentive passes and deal with them by putting them in ISS for that. So they're not going to an incentive and they're not bugging you. Will Wilson, you're going to be running a won't room. All right, that's for the kids that won't. We haven't figured out how to work this, but I've got a group of teachers going to be doing the won't room. And what that means is during this period, the teachers might be able to submit through a form kids that they want out of their room on certain days. Because they're just a won't. They don't qualify for incentive. They don't. What we want to do with the won't room is not just to punish them, but to say, look, put them in a room with like a Will Wilson. Let's figure out ways to bring people from the community in to talk to these kids and present something to the importance of, look, just get your high school diploma. You know, don't bug the class. It's not always just hammer them and talk to the parents. Some days it's going to be just pick up the phone and talk to the parent. Look, your kid is in the one room because nobody wants them. I mean, sometimes you have to be honest with them. You know, that might be the phone call I make. I wouldn't put that on Will Wilson. All right? Kaiser. I put both of you on there so you can work that room together. These are that secondary intervention that people are asking for that we're going to start building up. Okay? These are going to be assigned. On here would be like the SPED teachers that aren't you two during this period. So it might be Hoffman right here, right? Hoffman's going to assign her caseload to that. That'll be based on passes. So the teacher in the regular room doesn't have to think about it. They're going to receive a pass. These people will do it all by passes. Okay? These people will do it all by incentive pass. These are administrative passes, or whatever you want to call them. And then the clubs are just send the kid to the club because he's on a club list. Okay? Yes?
Okay, so if you have the clubs listed every Tuesday, somebody gets to go to TSA.
Yes.
This will not be a question about Tuesday, but like on Mondays, where it probably says every Monday you get to go to junior civitan. What if I have a student that I really need to keep in my class, but she is on the junior civitan list?
You don't go. Remember, teacher takes priority. No, you don't go to your club. It's not a freebie, but you got to let them know. I mean, you're the teacher of the room.
Add that into that list. Club activities are open to all students that are active members of the organization at the discretion.
They're open to them based on earning it. Yeah, we'll write something into that.
Okay.
In good standing. No matter what.
Yeah.
And
At the discretion of your
Guys,
teacher.
but remember, nobody should go anywhere, and that's the part I think is not getting through. Not just to you, to everybody. It's been a problem. We owe nothing to the children. We owe them nothing. The teacher of record is in charge. We owe them nothing. They have not earned it, they don't get it. If they keep getting it without earning it, we're defeating the purpose. I can't fix the teacher that's got no guts to say no. Look, I'm telling you, intervention is Nancy Reagan. Just say no. And if the kid comes to me, Mr. May won't let me out of class, tough luck. That's my answer to him. Mr. May is your teacher during that time. You're assigned to him. He decides whether you earned it or not. And even if you feel you earned it, tough luck. Okay? This other stuff, if a kid misses TSA every week because he won't do the work in your class, that's how the message gets sent. Not, okay, you get to go even though you owe me something. That's there. And then you can put blame on Daddy McPhee. McPhee said, right, I can't send you. You didn't earn it, and if you get caught out there going to TSA and you're failing my class, why is a kid in TSA failing class, Matt?
Should be.
Right? So if the kid's showing up to your meetings, you're assuming the kid has permission to be there. Whose responsibility should it be if the kid ain't in your class and is going to TSA? The teacher. That's you. You got him, folks. Don't overthink it either. You're mine. You're all here right now against your will. You're here. There are certain people that earn getting out of here. Joe, you wanted to get out today. I said no. Just say no. Nancy Reagan.
What percentage of the student population are members of clubs?
Very small.
That's what okay. That's
Very
the issue,
small.
yeah.
Most of the members are members of multiple clubs.
Right, and that's what I was, okay.
Yeah. So when you start looking at WAC Club, that's the same kids that are in Beta Club, that are the same part of Quiz Bowl, they're the same part of
That's the
that.
problem.
Yeah. Now, there are going to be periods where, like, let me show you Mondays, when you guys are teaching, there's another category in here that we're working on cleaning up. Sawyer has once a month that she's doing art club. That's specific to certain members. But the other 3 times in a month, it's going to be open to all kids. So if you look at Mitchell, who does Civitan, that's the first Monday. But it's going to be chess, it's going to be open to everybody. The second, third, and fourth Mondays. Okay? So it's going to take a little training for the kids to understand that, and we've got to figure out how to lay that out in the poster so they understand it. Because I don't want to create a poster every month. I want a poster that knows, on Mondays, this is where you can go. And you always know. And Mondays has a smaller group, so they have a lot less choices. Okay? So we might see more in social club. Matt Hatters is saying they're going to open it up to everybody. Some of these folks are opening it up to everybody for incentives. Okay? And on these days, that's going to have to be, to open up an incentive, you know, we may need to increase the numbers of some of these assigned ones. So we'll work that out each time. If we say in the first period on Mondays you're still having a problem, at least I know it's Mondays and I can fix that. But does it make sense what we're saying? I know there's going to be some hurtfilioma from the elective folks. I know that. As we work through this, if there's a way to fix it, I'm all about it. But right now, to try to decrease class size, I don't know any other way until we get this perfected. Attendance will continue the same way it is. Okay, you got the sheet Dr. Williams is making the sheet to make sure it's out there. We'll start on February 1st. She'll create the attendance passes. We'll put them into the core teachers' classes. You get to get 10 incentive passes. Do you have to give 10 incentive? Do you have to give all 10? If they don't deserve it, don't give it to them. I think they get it in their head that they get it. They don't. And sometimes you can give an incentive pass that kid drives you crazy. So you can do, and just keep your good ones one day. When they talk about that one that they're saying they don't have time to get to the extension, well, maybe once every 4 weeks, you just say, look, I'm tired of dealing with you guys. I'm going to deal with these 20 great kids. Do that for yourself sometimes. Do an extension activity so they feel wanted. But start focusing during that gap with those kids that could pass if you could give them their attention. That's what we want. Get the kid who, if they were given the attention, you can get the help. We're going to start using this to help you with those wants. I don't know, I'm going to have to put it in a better way so it doesn't get out to the parents. I'm going to call them wants. Sorry. Okay, good. Questions? Can we move forward with this on Monday?
I don't actually send, most of my kids stay, so.
Yeah.
Not offending me, but, now, in chorus, of course, as soon as I lose a lot of the kids to the clubs, I do have a lot of kids anyway, so, again, those kids are often the louder singers, the better. So, we have a lot of downtime, we'll sing, extend a couple things, but I encourage them to work on other classwork. If I'm keeping everybody, I'm fine with that, but I need better communication from teachers calling specifically to take them out, not for something, for that individual work, because they're more than welcome to do that. But email, phone call, pass, I get all of it, which I'm okay with sending, but if we can think of something that keeps us consistent there.
Yeah, and I think right now the word pass is going to have to be the same thing. For example, if I'm a TSA, you might create a pass that they're going to have for that Monday, and they have to let the teacher know I'm going to go to TSA, or the teacher has to say, all right, you did not qualify for kid, you keep that list, you're not going, I need you in here. Or just tell your kids on Tuesday, you need to be in here. Or Monday, whatever it is, okay? But the pass is going to be the critical part, working that better.
Just having them
ahead
of time.
Email right now, and calls, and walk-ins as you think of things. I know your minds are thinking. I need to hear that information, because it's bringing up questions each time I go through this. I mean, McLean's head's about to explode over there on this. All right? So, all right, thank you. Oh, the